LEGO sets are getting bigger and bigger, but what's surprising is that the largest sets don't necessarily have the most steps. For example, the massive Firehouse Headquarters set with over 4,600 pieces doesn't even make the top 50, and I bet you'll never guess which set is at number 1. Before getting started, it's worth mentioning that these aren't necessarily the LEGO sets with the most unique steps, but rather the highest step number, since some instructions have sub-steps and minor sub-assemblies that start over at 1. This would be incredibly hard to track and make it near impossible to collect data for each set that LEGO has released, so instead, these are the 50 sets with the highest maximum step number. Kicking things off at the number 50 spot, we've got the Bucket Wheel Excavator set from 2016. With 3,929 parts, this was always going to be a massive project, and the set's 669 steps ensure that you'll be digging through bricks for quite some time. Just ahead, with 672 steps, is the impressive Loop Coaster, with its 3,756 bricks. The real star of these instructions has got to be step number 452, which requires you to use a total of 255 chain link elements to form the coaster's chain. Very tedious. Next up, we've got the Volvo Articulated Hauler released in 2020. This is only the second of several Technic builds on this list, with 691 steps spread across its 2,193 pieces, which actually makes it one of the smallest sets in today's video. It has a lot of steps in comparison to its piece count. Now, with 10,001 parts and standing nearly 1.5 meters tall, the Eiffel Tower is one of the largest LEGO sets ever produced. Funnily enough though, it barely makes its way into this video, with a shockingly low 692 steps spread across its 3 full instruction booklets. This build is known for its incredible repetition and massive steps. For example, the infamous step 263 requires a whopping 144 pieces in a single step. You'll be adding a lot of pieces each step and seeing a lot of these repetitive marks in this set for duplicating entire sections of the build. Going to the exact opposite end of the spectrum, this BMW Technic set only has 1,920 parts, but still clocks in at a staggering 700 steps in its single massive instruction booklet. But it's actually a little worse than that. Like many Technic sets, this build has several smaller sub-assemblies whose steps we're not necessarily counting here. For example, step 25 is made up of 5 smaller steps, and 2 of them split up even further. Also with 700 steps, but almost 1,000 more pieces, is the Winter Chalet set from 2021's Bricklink Designer program. Overall, it's a pretty standard build with a lot of tiny details hiding in every corner, such as the random hot dog sitting on the table visible from the back of the build. Pulling slightly ahead with 706 steps is the genuinely impressive Gringotts Wizarding Bank. This set has nearly 5,000 pieces, and for such a large set with this much detail, this many steps is hardly a shocker. Just ahead of that and weighing in at 5,201 parts and 708 steps is the Avengers Tower. Much like the Gringotts Bank, this massive build is packed with tiny details which quickly bump up the step count. Worth mentioning though is the fact that you'll need to assemble a finger-busting 269 of these frames with just as many of these panes of glass, which means that several of these steps are just for the same thing over and over again. With 713 steps and 2,331 parts, it's another Bricklink Designer program set with the old train engine shed. One thing I noticed about these instructions is that they don't seem to use any sub-assemblies at all, and every little detail is spread across multiple steps. To see what I mean, just look at steps 159 to 164. In a lot of standard sets, these would have been sub-steps underneath a single larger step, like we saw in the BMW bike set. Here though, what could be a single steps is spread across 6 steps and 2 pages. Jumping ahead a bit, this massive set from Monkey Kid Season 5 is a seriously fun build with 2,330 parts across its 728 steps. Even a quick glance at this build should tell you that it's got a lot of steps. With no large repetitive sections, this is actually an extremely fun and varied build. Monkey Kid has been giving us fun builds for a while, and Season 4's Dragon of the East Palace is another prime example of a varied set that will keep builders on their toes throughout. With 2,364 bricks and 735 steps, this set is more than deserving of a spot in today's video at the number 40 spot. At number 39, we've got the Milano spaceship from Guardians of the Galaxy. With just over 2,000 parts, this gorgeous display set requires builders to follow 737 steps across its 2 instruction booklets. This set has a wide variety of minifigures, and speaking of which, I've re-released the fan favorite minifigure patent poster for a limited time only, and you can get 10% off your entire order when you buy the bundle. These iconic pieces of art make great displays and are also a perfect gift for anyone who loves LEGO. Click the pop-up on screen or the link in the description to shop now. Moving on, it's another Technic set with the Airbus Rescue Helicopter. Officially, this 2001 piece set has 746 steps, but if you check out step number 702, for example, you'll see that the actual number is way higher thanks to multiple subassemblies. Now, when the LEGO Movie 2 was released back in 2019, we got several fantastic sets to go along with it. The biggest and best, though, is easily Welcome to Apocalypseburg. Despite every nook and cranny of this build being filled with amazing little details, the entire set paints a pretty bleak picture of life in Apocalypseburg. But regardless, all those little details do add up to 756 steps. With just 2 more steps than that, with 758 and over 4,000 parts, it's the Disney Castle from 2016. This set is jam-packed with references and Easter eggs, but the bulk of the steps are about building the castle itself, as the outer facade and decorations are incredibly detailed. Moving forward a bit, we have one of the only ties in this video. With 836 steps each, we've got the LEGO Technic Crawler Crane, as well as the Parisian Street from the Bricklink Designer program. While both of these sets have the same number of steps, the way that they're built couldn't be more different. Like many other LEGO buildings in today's video, the Parisian Street is made up of dozens of smaller assemblies, while the Technic Crane is really just a labyrinth of complex internal mechanisms. Up next is the classy Grand Piano with 3,662 parts and 840 steps. Then we've got the imposing Black Panther bust, which requires 848 steps to assemble nearly 3,000 pieces. And just ahead of that, it's the Porsche 911 GT3 RS. This set includes 856 steps and 2,704 bricks. And not to mention the Land Rover Defender, which comes right after that, which requires 860 steps to put it all together. This is actually a really good build. In the 29th spot though, there's the Mercedes-Benz G500 Professional line from 2024. This set comes with just under 3,000 pieces and an instruction booklet with 882 steps. Finishing off the bottom half of this list, there's the Retro Bowling Alley with 887 steps, once again from the Bricklink Designer program. I'm not sure if these use a different numbering system than LEGO's more official releases, or if these sets just go overboard with the detail, because as awesome as this set is, the fact that it has more numbered steps than something like the Avengers Tower, with about half the parts, is a little funny. Just ahead of the Retro Bowling Alley is the Treehouse set, which is by far a fan favorite. This set includes 894 steps, and this is followed up by the Republic Gunship set with its 915 steps, as well as the Mountain Windmill's 927 steps, which finish off the bottom 25 on this list. And so moving into the top 25, it's the Ninjago City Gardens. The Ninjago modulars are some of the most detailed and intricate sets out there, and so it's not surprising to see them popping up on today's list. This set comes with 5,685 pieces and uses them to a truly stunning effect in every corner of this very vibrant build. Overall, you'll need to carefully follow 963 steps to finish it. Next up is another rare two-way tie between the Bugatti Chiron and another Ninjago set, the Tournament Temple City, each with 970 steps. This is kind of a funny overlap because aside from the number of steps, these two sets have almost exactly nothing in common, other than being fantastic builds, I guess. Oh, and the part count is also nearly identical here, with the Temple coming in with only 110 less pieces than the Bugatti. Just slightly ahead of these two sets is the breathtaking Batman the Animated Series Gotham City set. If you're at all a Batman fan, then this set is an absolute must. LEGO perfectly captured the look and feel of the iconic 90s cartoon, and every one of this set's 977 steps is a true joy. Okay, now we're getting into the real big dogs and breaking into sets with more than 1,000 numbered steps. And to get that started, we actually have another tie here, both the McLaren P1 and the Liebherr R9800. While it's not at all surprising that these sets are complex, the fact that there are two different builds with exactly 1,000 steps is a strange coincidence. I do wonder if the designers added or removed a step or two to reach this perfectly round number. It's quite satisfying. Now, rapid firing through a few more sets, we've got the gorgeous Venetian houses clocking in at 1,013 steps, as you can see from this page in the instructions, followed by the gargantuan Imperial Star Destroyer and its 1,015 steps. With only 3 more steps in the Imperial Star Destroyer at 1,018, it's the 2023 version of the Disney Castle. This version has almost 400 more steps than the earlier release, but also comes with more than 800 more LEGO bricks. Next up is the very impressive Batcave Shadow Box with 3,981 parts and 1,057 steps. I was a little surprised to see this one so high on this list. I mean, it's definitely large and complex, but it doesn't seem to have quite the same level of detail as something like Ninjago City Gardens. But it turns out that all the moving parts that support the frame require a fair bit of clever engineering that really upped the number of steps. Moving on to an extremely expensive supercar, the Lamborghini Sian set is the second of these 1:8 scale Technic supercars that's found a place on this list, and that's not at all a shock. Not only are these sets fairly large, this one has nearly 4,000 parts, but the builds are incredibly complicated with dozens of moving parts. In the end, this build has 1,084 numbered steps, but hundreds more if you count all the sub-assemblies. Okay, now just by chance, we have 3 more Bricklink Designer Program entries in a row. Just take a look at these. At 1,086 steps, there's the modular construction site with its massive crane build. At 1,127 steps, we've got the seriously awesome Studgate train station, which uses a lot of clever building techniques, and at 1,134 steps is the Mountain View Observatory, which is one of my personal favorite Bricklink Designer sets, as I've always had an interest in space. Alright, now we're here in the top 10. These are the top 10 LEGO sets with the highest number of steps. At the number 10 spot, it's the Cat D11 Bulldozer with 1,138 steps, which collectively put together a total of 3,854 parts. The set is slightly smaller than something like the Bucket Wheel Excavator that started this video, but the Bulldozer has some serious surprising complexity. For example, the plow on the front requires nearly 150 steps to complete. Now moving on, at number 9, it's the Rough Terrain Crane, which is a super fun name to say out loud. This set amasses 1,170 steps across 4,000 parts. Much of the complexity here comes from the crane's telescoping arm and its ability to transform. To make this build stable, LEGO designers had to include a lot of redundant connections and extra supports that really kicked up the number of unique steps in this set. Moving on to number 8, this is the last of the Bricklink Designer Program entries to make it in today's video, the Mountain Fortress. With nearly 4,000 parts, this isn't the largest of these Designer Program sets, but it is the most complicated with 1,177 steps. I've got to say that I'm genuinely a bit shocked that this has more steps than something like the 2023 Disney Castle. Just look at the backs of them side by side, and it seems pretty obvious that the Disney Castle should be a more complicated build. Again, these Designer Program sets have a slightly different instruction style, which boosts them in these rankings a little bit. Coming in at number 7, we've got the Ninjago City Market set. Much like the City Gardens included earlier in this video, this set totally deserves its spot this high up on the list. This build is just so colorful and unique that you won't even realize that you've burned through 1,193 unique steps. At number 6 is the somewhat infamous Hulkbuster set. This build is routinely criticized as one of LEGO's worst sets due to its proportions being a bit inaccurate, but that doesn't change the fact that it's truly massive with over 4,000 pieces. The build's high degree of articulation also makes it fairly complex, and the entire process requires you to follow 1,196 steps. However, some LEGO fans still have a lot of dissidence regarding this set. Breaking into the top 5, it's the Technic set with more steps than any other, the Ferrari Daytona SP3. Much like the other 2 1:8 scale supercars mentioned earlier, this build is full of moving parts and complex connections. This set has 1,267 steps that each get you closer to finally having your own Ferrari for certainly a lot cheaper than the real thing. Next up, the number 4 spot belongs to the absolutely massive UCS AT-AT and its 6,785 parts. This build includes 1,280 steps, and it's kind of famous for just how difficult it is, but not in the way you think. When this set was released, many builders were upset when they spotted a few steps that seemed to be impossible to take apart once put together. It's regarding this step, and LEGO had to even release an instructional video to inform builders how to get these stubborn parts out. I'll provide a link in the description if you want to learn more, but for now it's time to get into the top 3 sets with the most steps. At number 3, it's the legendary UCS Millennium Falcon. You've probably been waiting to see where this set landed. This is one of the largest sets that LEGO's ever produced, and it translates to a whopping 1,379 unique steps. But you see, it's still not the most complicated set out there. In the runner-up position at number 2, this is 2023's Venator-class Republic Attack Cruiser, which includes 1,543 steps to assemble over 5,000 pieces. Unlike the Millennium Falcon, this build doesn't have too much in the way of interior decorating, and the majority of these steps are dedicated to building this behemoth's massive frame and intricate outer detailing. And finally, at number 1, the LEGO set with the most unique steps is the UCS Razor Crest with 1,696 numbered numbered steps. When collecting the data for this video, I was honestly quite surprised to see this at the top spot, but then I figured it out. Attaching the giant engines to either side of the frame is quite the engineering challenge. Of the set's 4 instruction booklets, book 3 is entirely dedicated to creating the support structure for these engines, which takes hundreds of steps and 6 bags of pieces. But have you ever wondered which LEGO set has the most minifigures? Well, click on this video right now if you want to find out, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more LEGO videos.